Part 41. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 429. What's going on? They're killing each other, Zoro asked. No, this man is a patient. This is the result of previous treatment with head-piercing surgery. Right, Dr. Chopper, Robin asked. Because Chopper was afraid of the dead man's skull being far away, the psychological shadow just now hadn't disappeared. After Chopper walked in and observed, he said, "Indeed, this is head-piercing. It is used to treat brain tumors. But it was a medical technique a long time ago." Robin checked some marks on the skull again, and said, "There is tar on it. It is a funeral custom in the South China Sea area. This crew member died of illness during the voyage and was temporarily buried." Then Robin brought over another ancient book. She kept flipping through it. Finally stopped on a page. This page has a picture and a large paragraph of text on it. Robin read it and said, 208 years ago, the Kingdom of Bliss in the South China Sea sent the large ocean-going expedition ship St. Bliss to investigate the Great Route. After 3 years of voyage, the St. Bliss was lost. I lost the information and disappeared for no reason. Look at the picture of the St. Bliss. Everyone gathered together to look at the picture. The picture showed a turtle-shaped bow with a sail pattern that combined a circle and 4 triangles. Everyone was thinking back to when the huge ship fell just now. Indeed, the bow and sail of the ship just now are very similar to this one, Sanji said. Rog said, "Oh my god, this ship has been floating in the air for more than 200 years. Robin looked at the bones in the coffin again, and put the assembled skull on the bones. Judging from the teeth on the bones, the deceased was about 30 years old. And that kind of medical technology was prevalent more than 200 years ago, Robin said. It is undoubtedly a huge question that is placed in front of everyone now. If it is solved, then we can find a way to the legendary empty island." Luffy said, "Okay, then let's prepare to salvage." Usopp also said excitedly, "Okay, those who are going to salvage Captain Usopp must take the lead." Everyone turned their gazes to the wreckage of the huge ships that had fallen before in the sea. These wreckages floating on the sea surface are only a part, and only those wreckages that sink to the bottom of the sea can obtain more information. At this time, there was a sudden surge on the sea. A giant sea snake that could swallow a yak bursts out of the water. This behemoth glanced at the people on the deck and then returned to the sea. Usopp's expression immediately changed and he said, because he was worried about everyone's safety after diving, Captain Usopp decided to serve as a guard on the sea. Usopp immediately retreated in fear when he saw the huge sea snake. Rog looked towards the sea and said, "If you want to salvage it, then I have to seriously prepare a plant weapon." Luffy said happily, "It's all up to you. If you really want to dive down, you need plant weapons that can be used to dive into the sea." Then everyone began to prepare. Roger is responsible for making plant weapons. Usopp is making some auxiliary tools. Sanji quickly threw the bones that both Nami and Chopper feared into the sea. On the sea, many people were buried at sea after they died on board. But others were put into coffins to be taken back to their hometowns. This deceased person died on the ocean-going expedition ship St. Bliss more than 200 years ago. He originally wanted to transport the bones back to his hometown in the South China Sea for burial. As a result, the St. Bliss arrived at the legendary Sky Island for unknown reasons. It has been floating in the sky like this for more than 200 years. There were some other wreckage and pieces of wood on the deck, and everyone cleaned up the deck and threw the wreckage into the sea. A few hours later, it was afternoon. Rog finally finished transforming the plant weapon. "Okay, this is my modified plant weapon for diving." Breathing bulb. Roger pulled out 5 bulbs. These 5 bulbs have been transformed with the power of plant fruit to become fully the size of a wooden barrel. The bulb also has one end that resembles a trachea. Rog picked up a breathing bulb filled with air and introduced it is filled with air. This organ can be breathed when it is connected to the mouth. The air inside can be used for 3 hours under normal exercise. After looking at it, Luffy said, "It looks like this." So it is. 3 hours must be enough. Rog added, "One more thing. Don't forget that people with devil fruit abilities cannot go into the sea. It's not just a matter of light breathing, but also the inability to touch the sea water." Usopp said at this time, "Okay, it's my turn." Everyone saw Usopp bring a wooden helmet he made. There is also a onesie that was converted from a sheepskin bag. Usopp introduced, "This is a helmet, and this is a jumpsuit. Connect the air tube on Roger's breathing bulb to the helmet. This way, you can dive into the sea for salvage operations." After looking at it, Luffy said, "It looks really well made." "It looks very simple," Sauron complained. "But there is nothing else to use now." "Okay, those who want to go into the sea quickly put on diving equipment," Rog said. Rog, Zoro, King of Ninjas, Sanji and Luffy decided to go to sea to salvage. The 5 wear jumpsuits and helmets attached to breathing bulbs. After preparations, the 5 of them went to the deck and prepared to jump off. Usopp said, "Everyone, don't worry after you go down. Captain Usopp is here to escort everyone, and no one will disturb you." Luffy was already wearing diving equipment, looked at Usopp and said, "Nonsense, I'm still talking here if I don't go into the sea." Usopp looked like he had been stabbed in his weakness, and said with an ugly face, "I am just in case someone comes to snatch and salvage the ship from us." Then 5 people began to jump into the sea one after another. Usopp and Chopper are waiting on the deck of the Discovery. Of course, some nets and ropes are also prepared. Once Rog and the other 5 salvage the objects below, they can continue to fish them up. Usopp said while watching the sea, "This is really exciting. How many treasures and important items are there on the seabed?" Chopper said, "Have you ever salvaged a sunken ship before?" Usopp immediately regained his spirits and said, "Of course, Captain." Usopp dived into the bottom of the sea alone before and defeated the huge Neptune, and salvaged the entire sunken ship. Chopper was very surprised and said, "Really?" Usopp started to talk and said, "Let me tell you, at that time." Just as Usopp was there telling Chopper about his great experience, Nami turned her gaze from the sea to the sky. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 430. Are there really those strange oceans and islands in the sky that have allowed this huge ship to float for more than 200 years? It's unbelievable. There are oceans and islands in the sky, Nami said to herself. Robin looked towards the sea, and there were countless mysteries under the sea. A shipwreck has countless stories to tell. At this moment, a sudden sound of gongs and drums sounded. Usopp and Robin looked into the distance, only to see the shadow of a ship approaching constantly. In the sea water, Roger and Sanji dived continuously after the 5 of them went down. Luffy looked around curiously. "This is below the sea surface. It's rare to swim like this," Luffy said excitedly. Because of the ability of the devil fruit, Luffy has hardly dived into the bottom of the sea. Even if he did, it was because he was knocked down into the sea by the enemy. It is the first time that I can swim in the sea so happily. However, diving into the sea will also encounter a lot of marine life. Some sea fish swam past the 5 people. Luffy said very excitedly, "There are so many sea fish, it's really fun to swim with them." Sauron's diving suit was absorbed by a squid. Zoro took the squid down with great effort and threw it away. Sanji also took the opportunity to complain about Zoro, saying, "The green algae head is really popular with squid. It thinks you are seaweed." Zoro looked at Sanji with disdain and said, "There may be sea fish that eat curly eyebrows later." Rog looked around. Diving in the sea water really gave people the feeling of floating and wandering. But Roger's eyes were quickly attracted by the huge shadow below. "What is that?" said Roger. All 5 of them looked down. I saw a group of huge shadows swimming below. As we kept approaching, we found that these were a group of huge sea snakes with very long bodies that ate yaks with one bite. One of them saw the 5 people sneaking in, and opened its mouth first to roar. Sanji looked at them and said, "This guy must be the sea snake that appeared on the sea just now." This one saw prey and called more companions. Sauron said, "I just said, they are here to eat you with curly eyebrows." Sanji said disgustedly, "What are you kidding now?" Luffy looked at the giant sea snakes and said, "Wow, that looks scary." Of course, Luffy is more excited. The Ninja King is also ready to fight. Zoro gripped the 3 samurai swords at his waist. Unlike others, Zoro put all the samurai swords on the outside of the diving suit. The King of Ninja also wears ninja swords outside his diving suit. Rog and Sanji are also inconvenient to play. Zoro went to fight with the Ninja King. There are 6 huge sea snakes below. One of them was also the huge sea snake that had emerged from the sea before and rushed towards Sauron first. This huge sea snake opened its bloody mouth and bit Sauron. Zoro swung his samurai sword and aimed it at the sea snake's mouth. After a huge slash, half of the giant sea snake's mouth was cut off. It didn't die right away, though. Just as this huge monster roared in horror, Sauron slashed and killed it again. This beheading completely ended the life of this giant sea snake. The carcass of the giant sea serpent sank to the depths below. 2 more giant sea snakes attacked. Zoro swung his samurai sword and continued to kill. Although it is said to be beheading, Sauron's beheading power is also huge. These 2 huge sea snakes were also killed. At the same time, 2 huge sea snakes attacked the Ninja King. The King of Ninjas swam nimbly and successfully beheaded the 2 huge sea snakes with his ninja sword. There was one last giant sea snake left, which was scared and ran away. After solving 5 huge sea snakes, the 5 continued to dive. As they continued to dive, they finally approached the wreckage below. Most of the shipwrecks have sunk to the bottom of the sea here. The 5 swam together to the huge wreck. At this huge moment, I took a closer look, and saw that the huge wreckage of the ship was already riddled with holes. In addition to the corrosion of more than 200 years, there is also the damage caused by falling from the sky just now. The 5 began to search for valuable things on the wreckage of the ship. Roger came to a crack in the piercing. The gap here is huge enough for people to pass through. After entering the huge gap, Roger kept exploring inside. Finally in a room. This appears to be a captain's cabin. I saw a skeleton lying down behind a desk. He was dressed very much like a captain's overcoat. There are globes, nautical charts, and ink and pens on the desk. The room is full of books. Roger took one from the bookshelf. This book is already quite old. However, this ship has been floating in the sky for more than 200 years. It makes the preservation of the books here is still relatively good. If it stays on the bottom of the sea for a long time, it must be rotten. The book appears to be a log book. Rog glanced at it a few times and kept turning back. In the last few pages, I saw the content that surprised me. After an unexpected journey, we finally arrived at the legendary empty island. What followed was also quite surprising. However, in order to prevent excessive immersion in the water, continue to soak the book. Roger quickly put it into his sheepskin bag. There are still a lot of books here, and Roger continues to pack some books. Roger found important information and items here. At the same time, Sanji was also searching inside the sunken ship. He entered through another crack in the hull. Finally Sanji entered a hallway. This appears to be the crew's quarters. The doors on both sides of the surrounding area are mostly broken due to the age and the shock of the fall just now. Sanji entered one of the rooms. On the floor of this room were piles of broken pieces of daily necessities. However, among a pile of daily necessities, there is a portrait. There is a beautiful woman in the portrait. Sanji walked over and picked up the portrait. The portrait shows a wooden stick stabbed into the beautiful woman's head. Sanji looked at the portrait of this beautiful woman for a long time and then accidentally glanced at a corner of the room. There was a corpse there. The skeleton lay on the ground, and the head of the corpse was pierced with a harpoon. It seems to be a coincidence that the position of the pierced head of the beautiful woman in the portrait is almost exactly the same as that of the skeleton. Sanji suddenly felt that this seemed to be a feeling that things were different. The utensils in the room belong to the male crew. That beautiful woman may be a relative of the dead crew member or something. But no one can tell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 431. Sanji left this room and searched some other rooms. Of course, some weird supplies were found and put into sheepskin bags. Sauron went to a warehouse in the sunken ship alone. There are a lot of iron and firearms in it. It seems to be an arms warehouse. There were cannons and rifles and pistols and swords. Sauron is not interested in Western swords. But there are actually several katana swords here. Sauron came to the front of these warriors. He looked at the katana swords, some of which were still in good condition despite the age. At least it still looks like this from the scabbard. Zoro picked up one of the katana swords. He struggled to draw his katana. Zoro struggled to hold the hilt and sheath of the katana. After a while of hard work, the harsh sound of broken metal was heard. Sauron pulled out the hilt, but only a section of the blade that was seriously rusted was pulled out, and the rest was broken. Zoro put down the katana. I don't want to try those samurai swords anymore. There is such a weapon in the pompous scabbard. You must know that this ship has been floating in the sky for more than 200 years. These samurai swords have been kept in their scabbards and have not been weathered. Some weapons can be preserved well after thousands of years. However, these samurai swords with exquisite scabbards were destroyed in just over years. It can be seen that it is really a weapon used for decoration. A truly powerful weapon, even the word Wado written on Sauron's waist, is still intact even if it has been in the sea or the desert for more than 200 years. A truly powerful weapon, like a swordsman, is not afraid of tempering and wind and rain. Luffy entered a kitchen-like room through a crack in the ship's hull. Here Luffy saw a lot of tableware. Most of these tableware are still well preserved after a long time. There are iron pots and stoves and some fine china tableware. But Luffy doesn't care. Here Luffy also found several opened cans. Of course it was a long time ago. Luffy found some oddly shaped shells here. When he saw these things he had never seen before, he put them into a sheepskin bag. The King of Ninja entered a huge cabin. It's huge, and it has a rudder. There are also many nautical instruments around. Obviously this is the driver's cab. In the past, huge ships were steered by crews here. Just as the 5 people were inspecting the sunken ship under the sea. Usopp and Robin on the deck of the Discovery on the sea saw the ship approaching constantly. At the same time, the sound of beating gongs and drums was more obvious. In addition to the sound of beating gongs and drums, there is also a sound of singing. Good salvage, good salvage, good salvage. For a while, singing accompanied by the crew beating gongs and drums sounded. The ship was getting closer, and the crew on board sang a song about salvage in high spirits. The ship kept approaching, and finally sailed to the side of the Discovery. Now Usopp and the others can clearly see what the ship looks like. The volume of the ship can reach meters, which is not a small ship. At the front of the ship is a toy figure resembling a gong-beating monkey. It's just huge. There is a huge banana-shaped machine hanging down on the left and right sides of the ship. The decks of the ships are filled with tropical trees. On the sail of the huge mast there was a monkey's head, with a banana on the left and right. Although the layout is very similar to the common skull and crossbones, Usopp felt a little funny when he saw this strange sail logo. Suddenly a piercing whistle sounded. "Stop the boat." It was followed by a loud voice of command. The ship's crew quickly stopped the ship. The loud voice continued to shout, "Is this where the shipwreck is?" The crew on the ship shouted in unison, "Yes, Salvage King." Suddenly a burly big man jumped out. He stood on the side of the ship, looking at the surroundings like a contemptuous hero. Usopp and Nami saw that this was a big, burly man. But his clothes are very funny, like a yellow suspender suit like a toy boy. The head looks like that of an ape. Usopp and Nami felt awkward for a while when they saw this appearance. This big man who looked like an ape shouted to the crew, "I am the king of salvage. This area of the ape is my territory. Salvage the sunken ship." "It's Gigi," his crew members shouted in unison. The big man who claimed to be the Salvage King made a pose, and the crew behind him were also wielding knives and guns. Nami on the deck of the Explorer saw the other party and said, "What's wrong?" Such a group of troublemakers came out. Rog and Sanji, who had just been the core force among the crowd, signed into the sea to salvage the sunken ship together. The sudden Salvage King and his crew wanted to salvage the sunken ship. Usopp also complained, "It seems like a pushy guy." Salvage King Orangutan turned his head to the deck of the Discovery. On the deck of the Discovery, Usopp, Nami, and Chopper were stared at very uncomfortably. The Salvage King Orangutan asked, "This is my territory. We want to salvage the sunken ship. You didn't intervene, did you?" Usopp swallowed after hearing this. The Salvage King's personnel also focused on the sunken ship on the bottom of the sea. And also suspicious of them. Nami looked at the Salvage King ape and asked, "May I ask, are you the crew members of the salvage fleet?" The Salvage King ape suddenly froze, and his expression soon became full of narcissism. Then he took out a mirror and looked at himself narcissistically and said, "Am I so like an ape? Am I a handsome ape?" The Salvage King ape mistook the crew member Nami said for the ship ape. See how narcissistic the Salvage King Orangutan is. Usopp, Nami, and Chopper were all ashamed. Usopp asked again, "Are you specializing in salvaging ships?" The Salvage King said narcissistically, "Ah, yes. We are the men who salvage sunken ships in the world, find out the rare treasures inside, and then sink them into the sea. Our men salvage sunken ships." The Salvage King Orangutan actually danced. This orangutan is extremely narcissistic. And proud of being the king of salvage. The Salvage King ape looked at Usopp and the others again and said, "Are you here waiting for the people from the Salvage King ape and the man ape pirates to come and salvage it? I will let you open your eyes. No need to thank me." The Salvage King said that very narcissistically. Nami and Usopp blinked and looked at Salvage King ape. Usopp and Nami looked at each other and said, "Fortunately, he has a poor IQ." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 432. Now the five of Rog are salvaging the sunken ship under the sea, and it would be very bad if they salvage the King Orangutan with evil intentions. Salvage King personnel continued to whistle and issue orders. Now all personnel should pay attention and quickly carry out salvage operations in the sea. The crew members of the Salvage King Orangutan began to prepare to dive for salvage. Groups of crew members in steel diving suits began to enter the water. Their steel diving suits are different from those of the white whale pirates they encountered before. The steel diving suits they use each have a tube connected to the ship. Not only can air be continuously transmitted, but sound can also be transmitted. In this case, it is possible to continue operations in the sea. Seeing his crew members entering the sea one after another, the Salvage King Orangutan excitedly said in a loud voice, "Everyone must be careful, the sea is full of darkness and danger. But we are brave salvage warriors. We are not afraid of anything to salvage the treasures from the bottom of the sea." On the deck of the Discovery, Usopp saw the crew members going into the sea one by one. Whispered, I really hope there won't be a conflict. Nami said, do they like salvage very much? They also like to show off in front of us. The salvage king officer ordered, okay, put down the salvage basket. A huge iron clamp-like thing was lowered. This huge iron clip is the salvage basket. Aided by a crew in steel diving suits, the giant salvage basket is continually descending into ever deeper water. Eventually the huge salvage basket was lowered over the wreck on the ocean floor. At this time in the sunken ship, Rog and Zoro, Sanji, Luffy and the King of Ninjas all met. The five of them went to a huge conference room inside the ship together. The conference room is full of chairs. There is also a huge table in the front. Apparently the meeting place for the whole ship. The meeting room is big enough to accommodate hundreds of people. However, some corpses can still be seen here. There are more bones here than in other places, there are dozens of bones. The five people's previous explorations in the sunken ship found a total of hundreds of bones. See these dead people and this meeting room from so many years ago. It is unknown what happened to the ship in its final hours. At this moment, suddenly the sunken ship shook for a while. What's going on? Sanji said. Undersea earthquake, Zoro said. Impossible, the Ninja King said. Strange, I heard some mechanical sounds just now, Roger said. Whoa, what happened to this ship? Luffy said. At this time, on the outside of the sunken ship, a huge salvage basket clamped the hull like a clip. Once the fixation is done, it's time for the final work. On the surface of the sea, the salvage king orangutan and the crew all received the information from below. Okay, the salvage basket is already equipped, said the salvage king ape. At this time, Usopp and Nami on the deck of the Explorer looked worriedly at the sea below and at the salvage king ape. Salvage king ape also looked at Usopp and the others. Hey, your expressions are so weird. Do you want to see something really exciting? The salvage king orangutan said happily. Usopp and Nami quickly performed. Usopp said yes. Nami said, of course, I want to see your salvage. Usopp looked at the bow of the salvage king's ape and their ship very seriously. On the prow of that boat is a gigantic sculpture of a monkey beating a gong. The salvage king ape looked at the sculpture of the giant monkey and said, ah, so it looks like this. You are really discerning. This sculpture is not an ordinary sculpture, but a very important one. Salvage tools. Salvage king ape ordered, hull hunters move out. The crew began to operate the machinery on the bow of the ship to lift the gong monkey device. Monkey, monkey, monkey. With a loud shout, the mechanism of the gong beating monkey was lifted up. The gong monkey-like mechanism is the hull hunter. Hull hunters are lowered into the sea and continue to dive. Finally the hull hunter reached the bottom of the sea where it was clamped on top of the salvage basket of the sunken ship. There is also a huge banana-like airbag on top of the salvage basket. The hull hunter clamped the bananas between two giant gongs. The two giant gongs in the hands of the hull hunter can be connected to banana airbags. That's what hull hunters and salvage baskets are for. Inflate and float the giant banana airbag through air delivery. And in addition to the banana airbags, the huge clips of the salvage basket clamping the hull can also input air into the hull. On the surface, Salvage King Orangutan obtained news from the diving crew below. Oh, you can inject air below, said the Salvage King Orangutan. He brought a thick windpipe to the side of his mouth. Nami saw it and said, ah, he doesn't want to inject air into it, right? Usopp said, I'm afraid so. The Salvage King Orangutan took a deep breath. He then exhaled a breath of extremely powerful air into the trachea. The lung capacity of apes is enormous, comparable to that of many air-transporting machines. The huge air entered the hull hunter on the seabed below through the gas pipeline, and was input from the joints between the ends of the two huge gongs of the hull hunter and the banana airbags. After this huge air delivery, The banana air sacs begin to inflate. After salvaging the king orangutan on the deck and exhaling several times in a row, he gave the gas pipeline to the crew for manipulation. The crew brought in huge gas equipment. It's actually a giant, spring-loaded pedal gas rig. The two people above jumped together, and being able to use this device to generate a huge amount of air into the gas pipeline can only be achieved through weight. The two of them were just jumping on a spring bed. Huge streams of air continue to pass through the gas pipeline to the seabed below. Working hard to refuel and dry it will not only make the banana airbag float. It will also make the hull below float, said the salvage officer. After such a continuous flow of air down there on the ocean floor, the banana air sacs inflated rapidly. In addition to this huge banana airbag, the salvage basket clamped on the hull below is also inserted into the hull and begins to eject air. The gigantic mass of air squeezed out the sea water. Although the hull was severely damaged, the speed at which the air was conveyed from above was astonishing, and many places inside the hull were actually filled with air. A large amount of foam poured out from the hull. Inside the cabin of this rising sunken ship, the five of Rog and Sanji also discovered that the surrounding sea water was squeezed out by the air. How could this happen? Sanji said in disbelief. The ship is rising, Rog said. Luffy felt the ship sway and floated up, and said, "Wow, we were picked up." "I always have a bad feeling," said the Ninja King. Sauron looked at the cabin that was already full of air, and said, "Someone is really salvaging us." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 433. The wreck kept floating upwards. The sunken ship continued to rise, and the five of Rog also felt that they had to do something. "I'm afraid it's not good here, get out quickly," Rog said. The five of them quickly left here with some valuable items. The five people went to the cockpit of the ship together. At this time, the air in the cockpit had already squeezed out the sea water, but there were also a group of people wearing steel diving suits here. These divers were a little surprised when they saw the five people. They quickly punched Luffy and Rog with their fists. Rog and the others quickly fought back. These divers are no match for five people. Although it was inconvenient for Rog and the others to wear diving suits, they still had the upper hand. At this time, on the sea surface, the Salvage King Ape heard the voices of the divers below. "What? We are under attack. There are people in the sunken ship." The Salvage King Orangutan and the others were shocked when they heard the evil. They had never been in this situation before. "I encountered enemies in the sunken ship. Could it be that I encountered the legendary deep-sea ghost?" a crew member said with great fear. "How is it possible, but there are enemies there," another crew member said. There was a lot of discussion. Salvage King Ape looked at everyone, his expression was very angry. The salvage officer said, "No matter what, these enemies actually attacked my brothers. It's unforgivable." The crew quickly joined him in saying, "Yes, that's unforgivable." The Salvage King Man Ape stood on the side of the ship and shouted loudly, "If anyone dares to bully our members of the Man Ape Pirates, then he will definitely die." The crew members shouted together, "Yes, you will definitely die." The Salvage King Ape said with high morale, "Big brother must stand up for the younger brothers." The crew behind him also brought a huge oil painting of flames as a background for the Salvage King Ape. The Salvage King Ape looked very powerful and heroic, and he looked at Usopp and the others on the deck of the Discovery. "Hey, why don't you take pictures?" the Salvage King Ape said narcissistically. Usopp and Nami had weird expressions after hearing this. "The Salvaged King Ape in front of me really loves to show off." Usopp said, "Ah, we don't have cameras." The Salvage King Ape said with some disappointment, "It's such a pity. But my heroic gesture will always remain in your hearts." The Salvage King Ape then plunged into the sea below. "Brothers, here I come!" shouted the Salvage King Orangutan. With a plop, the Salvage King Ape fell into the sea below. The crew of the ape pirates and Usopp and Nami on the Discovery are all looking at the sea below. The sea below was choppy for a while. The Salvage King Ape keeps diving. As he continued to dive, the huge sea snake that had survived before stared at him again. The giant sea snake's previous 5 companions were killed, but it didn't know what the strength of this ape was. The huge sea snake swam towards the Salvage King Ape. The huge sea snake approached the Salvage King Ape and opened its mouth wide to eat him. The Salvage King Ape saw the giant sea serpent attacking. "Why do you want to eat me? There's no way." The Salvage King Orangutan clenched his fists. Ape Power Fist. The Salvage King Ape punched the giant sea snake in the head. The huge sea snake wailed for a while, struggled a few times, and then sank to the bottom of the sea. After the huge sea snake sank, the Salvage King Orangutan continued to dive near the wreckage. At this time, the 5 Rogs were in the cab and defeated the other divers. Just as the 5 of them were about to leave, the Salvage King Ape rushed in. The Salvage King Ape waved his fist and glanced at everyone. Ape Luffy shouted in surprise. The Salvage King Ape, who was about to fight, immediately became happy when he heard this. "Oh, do I look like an ape?" Salvage King Ape said narcissistically. Luffy said, "Of course, you look too much like an ape." As a result, the two sides who were preparing to fight actually chatted happily. On the surface of the sea, both the ape pirates and Usopp are waiting for the people below to come back. Chopper looked at the sea below cautiously and said, "Are Roger and the others okay?" After thinking carefully, Usopp said, "It should be no problem, the 5 of them are all great. Just when the situation is getting worse now." In the sea water, behind the wreckage of the ship being salvaged, a huge shadow approached. This gigantic shadow opened its astonishingly huge mouth, biting the wreckage of this already huge shipwreck in his mouth. The wreck of the shipwreck was bitten into the mouth with one bite. Huge shadows continued to float up. Usopp and the others on the sea surface and everyone in the ape pirates saw the huge shadow floating up from below. What is this?" Usopp said. "It's so huge," Nami said in shock. The crew of the ape pirates also saw a huge shadow floating up from below. For a while, huge waves bulged. On the side of the 2 ships, a huge sea turtle that looked like a small island floated to the surface of the sea. No matter which side it is. Usopp, Nami, and Chopper all had their eyes widened and their mouths widened. Even the goddess of springs and Robin were shocked. Some of the crew members of the ape pirates were so frightened that they knelt down on the deck. This is a Sea King class comparable to an island. Just a gigantic turtle. That eye on a turtle's head is big enough to be over the size of many houses. That mouth could swallow both ships together. This giant sea turtle also had something in its mouth. There are still some gas pipelines that have not been bitten off. That's what connects the ships of the ape pirates. There are still some exposed pieces of wood from the sunken ship. The people of the ape pirates were the first to react. The boss is trapped inside. The crew pirates are in a mess. It is certain that Salvage King personnel and some divers were bitten in the mouth of this giant sea turtle along with the wreck. In the mouth of the giant sea turtle is the Salvage King Ape and those divers. At this time Usopp also reacted. Could it be that Rog and the others were swallowed by this giant sea turtle together with the wreckage of the shipwreck? Usopp said in horror. Nami was so frightened that she covered her mouth and said, "Oh my god, it's so scary." Chopper said in disbelief, "Rog and the others are in the mouth of this turtle." Robin and the goddess of spring also had serious expressions on their faces. Being swallowed by this giant sea turtle, it can be said that it is almost impossible to survive. At this time, the originally bright sky suddenly became very dark. As if it was night. Of course there is still some light remaining. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Le'er a Dream. Chapter 434. But Usopp's attention is not here. The mouth of the giant sea turtle was actually loosened. Usopp shouted from the deck of the Discovery, "Rog, Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, the king of ninjas. You must go to heaven." Nami said anxiously, "What do you mean by that?" Usopp said, "Do you mean going to hell?" At this moment, suddenly a figure was thrown up. The opponent fell heavily on the deck. It was Luffy. Then Rog, Sanji, Zoro, and the King of Ninja also returned to the deck one after another. There is also the previous salvage King Ape. Everyone panted quickly. Rog and the others threw away their diving suits. Zoro said, "Huh, I'm finally back." Sanji put down a sheepskin bag and said, "We finally got something this time." Rog said, "It's really scary. I didn't expect someone to attack us. And that guy who looks like an ape." And then he was suddenly swallowed by something. Luffy also woke up and said, "Ah, everyone is fine. We were attacked by something just now." Seeing that everyone was fine, Usopp took a breath and said, "Look at that thing." Roger and Sanji all looked at the giant turtle. "I saw the giant turtle opening its mouth. What is this?" Rogue and Sanji shouted in shock along with Zoro and Luffy. "The sea turtle is as huge as an island, and the ship is like a shrimp compared to it. We couldn't have been in this thing's mouth just now," Rogue said in shock. "How could this happen?" Zoro said in shock. "It was almost a narrow escape just now." Luffy was also shocked when he saw the giant sea turtle, but he quickly became happy. "Wow, we got eaten," Luffy said excitedly. Usopp looked at him and wanted to get into the giant turtle's mouth again. Luffy suddenly looked up at the sky and said, "Well, why did it get late so fast?" The sky became very dark. And there aren't any stars or moon yet. But soon he found that Nami, Robin, and Usopp's expressions were all stunned. Even Rog and Sanji looked into the distance in shock. Luffy also looked into the distance. At this time, Rog, Usopp, Luffy, the people of the ape pirates, and even the giant turtle looked into the distance. Under the hazy light in the distance, a huge shadow stood there. The shadow was human-like in appearance, but held a huge spear. Its volume is large enough to surpass this giant sea turtle thousands of times. There are 3 more shadows. Everyone present and the giant sea turtle were shocked by the great sense of fear. "Run away." Everyone quickly turned the ship desperately and began to speed up and escape for their lives. The giant sea turtle was also so frightened that it quickly dived into the sea to escape. On the deck of the Discovery, Rog, Luffy, Sauron, Sanji, Usopp, King Ninja, Chopper, Nami, Robin, and the Goddess of Spring all tried their best to escape in the opposite direction. Everyone used all the skills they could. After working hard for an unknown amount of time, they finally left the dark sea and arrived at the sea under the sun. Everyone on the Discovery under the sun was exhausted. The people on the deck who had regained consciousness began to comfort each other. "What was that just now?" Luffy said. "Is it some kind of monster?" Usopp said. Roger said, "Such a huge monster. There are really such big creatures in this world." Sauron said, "They are all able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the sky." Chopper said tremblingly, "The Great Root is really scary." Sanji looked at Nami, who was hugging her body now. "It seems that he has not been freed from the fear just now." Nami said with a chill all over her body, "What the hell is this?" Sanji hurried to Nami's side, comforted him and said, "Miss Nami, don't worry. Even if such things come, I will kill them." Nami punched Sanji and said angrily, "How can such a thing be defeated?" Robin's complexion has returned to calm. She said, "What we saw is not important anymore. The important thing is that we should find an island where we can rest as soon as possible." Rog and Sauron also agreed after hearing this. "Okay," Roger said. "Well, I have been sailing on the sea for so long. I met the seagull man and the one-legged captain. This time I met those guys who salvaged the sunken ship, giant sea turtles, and that huge monster. I really need to find a place take a break, Sauron said. At this moment, a loud voice sounded. It's really scary. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. I saw the Salvage King ape on the deck of Discovery. Rog and Sanji rushed over quickly, and they kicked over together. When did you get on the boat? The two kicked the Salvage King man in the ass, sending him flying into the sky. Then everyone drove the Discovery to continue sailing. Discovery continued on its voyage. After a series of adventures, everyone wants to find an island to rest. Finally, everyone found an atoll reef and began to rest here. There is still a lot of sand and some coconut trees on the atoll reef. Everyone started pitching their tents here. The sky has gradually reached sunset. Sanji started to light the fire. Roger and Usopp and Luffy and Zoro started looking for sea fish and shellfish. Aha, there are so many crabs here. Luffy said excitedly. From time to time, there are many crabs as huge as pumpkins coming up on the beach here. Everyone started to catch, and a large number of crabs were knocked down. In addition, the waves washed large amounts of shellfish onto the beaches of the atolls. These shellfish are also fine materials that are fine. Sea fish are still swimming around. Especially after the Discovery docked, many ferocious sharks swam over. These sharks originally wanted to wait for an opportunity to attack everyone. But they didn't expect that it would become someone else's delicacy instead. Three-sword style. Tornado. Sauron's three samurai swords slashed together, creating a whirling tornado sword energy, blowing the sharks in the sea away. The sharks landed on the beach and began to struggle desperately. But Luffy beat them down one by one with his fist. Luffy looked at these sharks happily, and said, "Ah, I miss the shark barbecue cooked by Sanji so much." Zoro said, "I prefer shark fin." Usopp said, "Okay, hurry up and give these ingredients to Sanji." At this time at one end of the atoll reef, Rog walked here with the king of ninjas and Chopper. I saw a raised sand dune-like thing here. Suddenly the dune began to shake. The three of them stopped in their tracks, only to see the sand dunes shaking constantly. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 435. The sand on the dunes keeps falling. To be precise, it is not sand but a huge shell. Could it be a huge shellfish? Chopper said. It seems to be more than that, Rog said. The giant wooden hand in his hand is ready to attack at any time. The Ninja King also found something was wrong. After shaking off the sand on it, the huge shell began to move again. Shellfish live in sea water, and they will undoubtedly die on the beach. This shellfish is unlikely to survive for long. I saw the shell turned around, and several huge crab-like things appeared below. Then a crab head with eyes as huge as 2 soccer balls popped out of the shell. Hermit crab, Roger said. Unexpectedly, there was a huge hermit crab inside this huge shell. Hermit crab, Chopper said doubtfully. Roger said, there is such a species among crabs. Their carapace is not the hardest, but they live by using the shells of other shell creatures as homes. Not only can they enhance defense, but they can also confuse enemies and prey. After hearing this, Chopper said in shock, there is such a creature. Rog looked at the huge hermit crab and said, but such a huge hermit crab is extremely rare. The giant hermit crab looked at the three of them with 2 eyes as huge as footballs. When Chopper saw it, he hid behind Rog in fright. When the giant hermit crab saw the three of them, it was as if they had found their prey. It swung its giant pincers enough to clamp a horse and began to attack the three of Rog. At this time, the giant wooden hand on Rog's right arm grew rapidly. The hand of the giant tree. Rog's rapidly growing giant wooden hand blocked the giant hermit crab's pincers with a punch. After the giant hermit crab's pincers were blocked, Rog turned the giant wooden hand's fist into a palm to grab the opponent's pincers. After grabbing the giant hermit crab's pincers with his giant wooden hands, Rog lifted the giant hermit crab up and threw it into the distance heavily. Boom! The giant hermit crab hit the beach heavily. Of course, the giant hermit crab was not killed by these injuries, and it started crawling on the beach again. The giant hermit crab rushed towards the three of them again. The Ninja King took out a few explosive shurikens from the bag at his waist this time. He swings the explosive shuriken and throws them all. The explosive shuriken hit the giant hermit crab, causing a violent explosion. The giant hermit crab was disturbed by the explosive shuriken, and the Ninja King took the opportunity to draw out the ninja sword and rush over. The King of Ninjas came to the side of the giant hermit crab, swung his ninja knife and began to kill. Puff puff. The King of Ninjas was the first to cut off the two eyeballs of the giant hermit crab. The two eyeballs of the giant hermit crab used to protrude high, but after they were cut off, the giant hermit crab became blind. The giant hermit crab now has no eyes and is running rampant. All crabs always walk sideways, and so do giant hermit crabs. The giant hermit crab was extremely painful because its eyes were cut off, and it was running wild here. Rog and the Ninja King looked at each other. Let's go. The two fought side by side. Rog's waving giant wooden hand found an opportunity to punch the giant hermit crab hard on the head. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Ninja King approached the giant hermit crab. The King of Ninja wields a ninja sword and concentrates his strength to perform the most powerful slaying. God-killing. The King of Ninja slashed with his ninja sword. Accompanied by the ear-piercing crackling sound, the shell of the giant hermit crab also shattered. This slash not only cut open the shell of the giant hermit crab, but also destroyed the brain of the giant hermit crab. The giant hermit crab, which received a fatal blow, stopped walking sideways. Rog and the King of Ninja breathed a sigh of relief, finally killing the giant hermit crab. After the giant hermit crab was killed, Chopper said in shock, "You are so awesome." Roger said, "Okay, give the ingredients to Sanji." Rog continued to use the giant wooden hand to drag the giant hermit crab away. Sanji was quite satisfied when he saw that everyone had gotten a lot of ingredients. "Thank you for your hard work," Sanji said. Giant hermit crabs, sharks, shellfish. Sanji can definitely cook a super seafood feast. The sun went down even lower. Soon it completely disappeared under the sea. The sky is also becoming full of stars, and the moon is also exposed. Above the atoll reef under the night sky. Everyone has a banquet together. Wow, so rich. Luffy's voice sounded. Around a bright campfire, Sanji cooks up a delicious pile of seafood. Buttered shark meat is roasted over a campfire to spew out swarms of oil. And the giant hermit crab being grilled. Countless shellfish are stewed in pots and stoves. Along with these delicious seafood, there is some toast as accompaniment. Sanji said happily, "Okay, grilled shark steak, grilled shark fin, grilled hermit crab meat, and stewed shellfish. Ladies, please enjoy these delicious seafood dishes first. Others can also eat some by the way." After hearing this, Usopp said dissatisfied, "What do you mean by other people?" Luffy didn't care and said, "It's starting." Luffy quickly put a plate-sized piece of grilled shark meat into his mouth. "Good to eat?" Luffy said in shock. Sauron started to eat grilled shark fin. Sauron enjoyed this delicacy with a drink of rum. The Ninja King also likes to eat grilled shark fins, and toasts with Zoro. "I didn't expect you to like shark fins so much," Sauron said. The King of Ninja took a sip of rum and said, "In Wano, only celebrities can eat delicacies like shark fin. It can be said to be a luxury food. I didn't expect that you can often eat these delicacies." Zoro said, "I want to eat the appetizers from Wano country. I must taste them carefully then." Rog likes grilled hermit crab meat the most. The meat of this hermit crab is very delicious. It is addictive to eat. Delicious, I can't finish eating so much crab meat, Roger said. Chopper also ate the crab meat, and he was shocked by the deliciousness of the crab meat. Hermit crab meat is so delicious, Chopper said in admiration. Usopp is also eating a giant leg of a hermit crab. Just the crab meat in one leg is enough to make people die. Usopp shouted as he ate, "It's so delicious." Sanji took great care of Nami, Robin, and the spring goddess. Everyone sat around the bonfire, enjoying this delicious seafood meal to their heart's content. Because the ring-shaped islands and reefs are very flat, groups of sea breeze blow, making everyone feel very comfortable. After enjoying it for a while, everyone was lying on the beach and looking at the stars in the sky. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 436. Just that afternoon not long ago, everyone experienced a thrilling experience. Salvaging a sunken ship from the bottom of the sea, meeting the ape pirates, encountering a giant turtle, and seeing that incredibly huge shadow. Usopp looked at the night sky and said, "It's like a dream." "It was an unforgettable adventure," said Chopper. Luffy said, "I feel so full after eating." At this time, Rog said, "Let's take a look at the items salvaged from the sunken ship." "Okay. It's time to take a look," Sanji said. Roger was the first to take out the logbook and some important books. "Let me read this logbook to everyone first." "I got it from the captain's room," Rog said. After hearing this, Robin also came over and sat aside, and said, "I want to hear it too." Nami also listened carefully to Rog reading these logbooks while drinking. Rog began to read the logbook. On May 1307, 5 in the lunar calendar. We set off from the Kingdom of Bliss in the South China Sea, and under the expectation of the entire kingdom, we embarked on an expedition on the Great Route. The expedition ship St. Bliss carried a lot of food and weapons and explored the tools used. There are 27 crew members on this huge ocean-going expedition ship. The crew and I are very happy and hope to explore the greatest sea area in the world. This is the pride of the Kingdom of Bliss. On March 1308, 3 in the lunar calendar, we entered the Great Route. The weather here was changeable and even chaotic. The compass was useless at all. In addition to using the recording pointer, we spared no expense to buy some permanent pointers in the hands of some merchants. According to need to go to the island that needs to be reached. On October 1310, in the maritime calendar, we sailed on the Grand Route for more than 2 years. We passed many islands and encountered some dangers. We fought with some pirates. The original crew of more than 12 people lost. There are still 500 people left. However, according to the tradition of the Bliss Kingdom, even if they go to sea, these crew members must be transported back to their hometowns for burial. We will put the dead who can be restrained into coffins, and temporarily bury them in St. Bliss, the area under the ship's hull. On April 1311, 4 in the lunar calendar, we arrived at Gaia Island on the Great Route and started replenishing. This is a rapidly developing port city. Here we heard the news that we can go to the legendary Sky Island. After some investigation, we finally obtained a route to Sky Island. On April 1311, 4 in the lunar calendar, we arrived at the legendary Sky Island after a difficult journey. This is an island floating in the sky. There are also ocean-like clouds around it that allow ships to travel. This is unbelievable. The crew who have survived until now are so excited that it is unimaginable. But it takes a long time to adapt because of the difficulty of breathing at high altitude. And there are many magical Sky Island creatures. Those huge Sky Islands fish can swim in the clouds of Sky Island. On April 1311, 4, we began to formally contact people in the Sky Island area. These people lived with wings on their backs. They looked like angels in mythology. They also sold us some special shells, we exchanged with the special products we brought. Both parties are very happy. On April 13/11, 4 in the lunar calendar of the sea, we stayed in Sky Island for a few days, but found something unbelievable here. There are actually two powerful forces that are constantly fighting here. And Sky Island was inexplicably those who call themselves God's rule. On May 13/11, 5 in the lunar calendar, for some reason, our crew clashed with a person who claimed to be a priest on Sky Island. The other party was aggressive. He threatened to impose the highest punishment on us. The crew of the St. Bliss all entered the state of alert. This ocean-going expedition ship is also equipped with powerful artillery and other weapons. The crew is also strong and good at fighting. If something happens, then we must defend ourselves. May 13/11, 5 in the lunar calendar, a terrible day. On this day, the priests of Sky Island led the magic soldiers to attack the St. Bliss. Although the hull was not damaged, I found that the crew suffered heavy casualties. They were able to fly and use those shells attack as weapons. The opponent is flexible and powerful. We can't resist. Finally, the St. Bliss is controlled by the opponent. Our weapons are disarmed. But they didn't kill us, but announced that we will be punished by the most cruel flow cloud punishment. On May 13/11, 5, we were moved together with the St. Bliss to a small floating cloud. There was no way to move here. We could only wait obediently. The crew panicked at first. But together with the cotters on board, I appease everyone. Let everyone feel at ease and find a way to escape. On May 13/11, 5, we were exiled together with the St. Bliss on this floating cloud for 10 days. There was no way to escape at all. And we could only consume water and food. Among the crew, a new commotion. May 13/11, 5 in the lunar calendar, was the most tragic day. The surviving crew members on the ship had a tragic internal massacre in order to compete for limited water and food. The only survivors were me and a few of the senior cotters. 10 people. Of course, the remaining limited water and food are enough for a while. June 13/11, 6, our water and food supplies are now completely exhausted. For the first time we have done something unspeakable. We have eaten the bodies of our crew members who have died in internal massacres. This is just to survive a little longer. On June 13/11, 6 in the lunar calendar, there were only 5 people left on board. I am writing this last logbook here. Because this is my last effort. This logbook may not be able to we were seen by other people. But we strayed into a legendary magical empty island. But we died so tragically. I hope that the people of the Kingdom of Bliss will not forget us. We also hope that the horror that happened on the St. Bliss don't let them know. Lock-ons, Captain of the St. Bliss. Rog also read out the key logbook. Of course, these logbooks, which recorded the horrible truth of the past, were read out. Make everyone around you look heavy, even fearful. Nami said in surprise, "This is really terrible." Usopp knew that the empty island he was trying to go to was so frightening, and even retreated a little, saying, "There are still people on the empty island. And there are so many terrible secrets." Robin asked for the logbook from Rog and looked at it more carefully. Rog looked at the crowd and said, "There are so many secrets in this legendary Sky Island. You can feel those mysteries just from this logbook. Mystery is also dangerous. Exploring any mystery also requires exposure to danger. Sky Island is extremely mysterious, containing many unimaginable secrets and dangers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 437. But this aroused Luffy's interest even more. Sounds great. We must go to Sky Island, Luffy said excitedly. Nami looked at Luffy with some embarrassment and said, "It's very dangerous there, and whether it can be reached is still a question. Rog said, there may be gold treasures on Sky Island. Generally, there are such things in mysterious areas. Nami's expression changed immediately after hearing this, and she said, ah, then let's go. After all, there are treasures. Once it is linked to money, Nami's eyes will shine immediately. Usopp said, well, anyway, going to Sky Island requires careful planning. Chopper said timidly, it's really dangerous there. Usopp was still willing to go, even though it was a bit dangerous. But deep down, like Luffy, he loves adventure. Don't worry, Captain Usopp will protect everyone, Usopp said, giving himself a thumbs up. Really? Chopper said. Rog brought back relevant navigation logs and some books, and Robin checked them very carefully. Then Luffy also opened his sheepskin bag and took out the weird shells inside. Let me show you, this is the treasure I brought, Luffy said happily. Most of these shells are spiral shells and are quite flat. Sanji picked one up and looked at it. But quickly the shell cracked open. Sanji, you broke it, Luffy said with a surprised look on his face. Sanji said, I just pinched it lightly. Who made it so weak? A few more shells were checked, and they were all damaged quickly. These shells have obviously suffered a lot of erosion and are already very dilapidated. Sanji and Zoro also took the items they brought from the sunken ship out of the sheepskin bags. Of course, what they brought back were some crew supplies and weapons from the sunken ship. Robin then helped to analyze, these are the special weapons and tools in the South China Sea area. But the age is long gone. It seems that this logbook is the most valuable, Sanji said. Robin looked at the logbook and said, now we can be sure that the Sky Island does exist. And there are mysterious forces ruling there. Luffy said, go on an adventure, go to Sky Island. Luffy's character likes all kinds of adventures the most. Usopp also looked serious and said, everyone, although the Sky Island is full of dangers, Captain Usopp will still lead everyone to adventure. Chopper also added to the fun for Usopp, saying, go to the empty island for an adventure and follow Captain Usopp. Rog said, then let's get ready. It seems to mention Gaia Island, right? Robin said, yes, it mentioned that they found a way to go to Sky Island on Gaia Island. Nami looked at the Ninja King and the Spring Water Goddess again, and said, originally, we were also going to Gaia Island. Once the Ninja King and the Spring Water Goddess arrived at the port of Gaia Island, they had to return to where they needed to return. Luffy said, okay, let's go to Gaia Island first. After a series of discussions and decisions, everyone was tired. Soon the bonfire on the beach of the atoll reef was extinguished, and the sound of snoring echoed. After this day's encounter, the crew sailed on for 4 more days. On the 5th day, we finally arrived near Gaia Island. This morning, the sun is shining brightly. Everyone gathered on the deck, and Luffy and Usopp were at the top of the giant wooden mast. Here at the very top, Luffy and Usopp look into the distance. Wait, Luffy. I think I saw something, Usopp said using a telescope to look into the distance. In Usopp's telescope, an island appeared in the distance. After hearing this, Luffy said excitedly, really? Let me see. Luffy grabs Usopp's telescope. Yeah, what happened? I can't see clearly, Luffy said. Idiot, you turned the telescope upside down. Usopp hurriedly helped Luffy correct the telescope. Luffy is now looking into the distance with the telescope. In the telescope, only an island appeared faintly. There really is an island, Luffy said. Luffy shouted towards the deck below, we're here, an island has appeared. Everyone on the deck heard Luffy's voice. At this time, Rog and Nami were looking at a navigation chart. Oh, it's really here, Rog said. Nami pointed to the nautical chart and said, it is indeed the direction of Gaia Island. Nami then commanded, okay, everyone is ready to land. Our destination is coming soon. Saran said, "It's finally here." Sanji was at the helm and said, "Miss Nami, please rest assured. My steering is absolutely fine." Discovery continues sailing towards Gaia Island. This huge warship gradually approached Gaia Island. As we get closer, the port of Gaia Island also appears. It is a huge port with hundreds of ships of various sizes anchored. Usopp and Luffy also descended from the top of the mast. On the deck of the Discovery, everyone observed the port. There are huge commercial cargo ships, cruise ships, and even pirate ships in the port. "Pirate ship," Nami said in surprise. "This port actually allows a pirate ship to dock," Usopp said in shock. "The pirate ship is actually moored in the port of Gaia Island so openly. It's unbelievable." Sanji looked at the various ships in the port and said, "Isn't it possible that everything is done here?" Rog looked towards the port, and saw a huge sign that said, "Gaia Island Magic Valley City Port." "This city is Magic Valley City," Rog said. "Magic Valley City is the only and largest city on Gaia Island. The scale is very large, even compared with the rapeseed flowers in Alabasta and Kingdom Newport before. Merchant ships from all over the world berth here for supplies, and this is the well-known transit port in the Great Shipping Line." After the Discovery sailed near the port, several single-mast speedboats quickly drove over, and these single-mast speedboats were only the size of the Mary. It carried a group of guard troops in uniform. "Everyone, please stop. This is the Gaia Island Magic Valley City Port Management Office. Please stop the warship. And report your identity and purpose," the person on a single-mast speedboat said using a loudspeaker phone bug. After listening to this, Rog and Usopp on the deck of the Discovery looked around. 4 sloops surrounded Discovery. "Indeed, we are too ostentatious," Usopp said. "No way, stop the boat. Tell them clearly," Nami said. Discovery was brought to a halt and the guardsmen boarded the ship. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 438. After all, when Vare separated from everyone, he gave a warship to them, which actually made everyone very conspicuous. The security forces negotiated with the Straw Hat Pirates on this warship. A burly guard officer said, "Everyone, please explain your origins." "Us." At this time, Luffy wanted to speak out, but Usopp and Rogram stopped him. Usopp said, "Be quiet. Everyone knows Luffy's big mouth. If he says any bad information, he will be caught by the other party." Nami stepped forward and said, "We are an expedition fleet from the Magnetic Drum Country. After sailing for many days, we arrived at Gaia Island. We hope to be able to resupply here. We will continue to sail on the Great Route for exploration." Nami lied without even blinking her eyes, as if it was real. But Rog and Sanji praised Nami in their hearts. The officer looked at Nami and then at the others. His eyes stopped on the giant wooden masts and sails on the deck of the Discovery. The giant wooden masts and sails Rogue created were trees and green leaves. "It looks very strange." The officer said, "This warship is really used for exploration. As long as you promise to respect the law in Magic Valley City and Gaia Island, you can park it after paying enough money." Hearing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Nami asked again, "Okay, how much will it cost?" The officer ordered to the side, "Tell them how much they need to pay." A guard in charge of statistics stood up, opened a notebook, and began to read. According to the port management law of Magic Valley City, ships that reach a size of 10 meters need to pay a basic berthing fee of 50 berries. If it is a warship, an additional 5 berries is required. The security management fee is 65 berries. A total of berries. And it's a daily fee, the guard read. Nami's face became very shocked, and she said together with Usopp and others, 65 Baileys. Usopp said, "Isn't this too expensive?" Sanji said, "Why do you charge so much?" Rog and Saran also felt that the cost was very high. Nami lowered her head and said nothing, her face becoming gloomy. It's like the dark clouds before lightning and thunder. Too expensive, Nami said suddenly. Nami raised her head and looked at the officer resentfully, even the officer was overwhelmed by Nami's expression. Nami said sternly, your charges are too high. It costs so much to park for one day. The commander of the security force said, I'm sorry, miss, this is the law here. Please pay, otherwise you will be deported. Rog quickly stood in front of Nami and said, okay, we just pay. Now that I have just arrived at Gaia Island, I still need to find out information and supplies. There must be no conflict at this juncture. The commander of the security force said, okay, that's enough. Now I have to pay enough money due to the constraints of others. Although Nami was annoyed, there was nothing she could do. After all, keeping the Discovery docked is the most important thing. Luffy wanted to beat the guard chief into the air. Nami said, okay, we'll pay. But we don't have enough cash. Need something of value to pay. The chief of the security force was silent for a moment, and said, okay. Nami and Sanji arrived in the cabin first. After a while, Nami and Sanji returned to the deck. This time Nami and Sanji place a pile of gold bars in front of the guards. Okay, take it. These should be enough, Nami said. The guards were shocked when they saw these gold bars. Especially this officer, his face twitched. But he quickly regained his composure and said, okay. The guards took away the gold bars and got off the warship. Discovery was then guided to a mooring location. The behemoth of the Discovery is anchored. Everyone on the deck got off the warship one after another. Everyone set foot on the land of the island again. After leaving the port, everyone walked on the street. Luffy was very excited to see that he finally arrived in a relatively large port city. Wow, I really want to eat a lot of it, Luffy said. Whenever Luffy arrives at an island, he wants to taste the local food. Sanji said, it's time to prepare some ingredients. Saran said, buy more wine, I've had enough rum. Usopp said, I need to get some more tools. Roger said, I want to get some more plants. Chopper said, I need to get some medicines, medical supplies, and medical books. Nami said to everyone, spend money and save some money. Although Nami's tone was flat, everyone understood how powerful Nami was. Okay, we will pay attention, everyone said. The King of Ninja and the Goddess of Spring Water will part here. After arriving at this transit port on Gaia Island, everyone went their separate ways. The King of Ninja said, we are finally here. We are about to say goodbye. The Goddess of Spring Water said, it's really a pleasure to be with you these days. Hearing this, Rog and the others felt a little regretful. Sanji looked the most frustrated and said, Goddess, don't leave us. There is a time when people are destined to be different, just like Wei is different from everyone. The Ninja King then said, but don't worry, we will stay here for a few more days. And you may have a chance to meet in the future. Usopp said, okay, we are going to Wano Country and Magic Island. The Ninja King said, I will wait for everyone. The Goddess of Springs said, I am the same. Although I went to Gaia Island after a lot of hard work, I have to face sad things. Even partners have to be separated. Forget it, why are you thinking so much? Let's have fun together, Luffy said happily. Yes, let's have fun exploring the city, Usopp said. Everyone began to walk on the streets of Magic Valley City. Check out this bustling port city. At the port of Magic Valley City, in front of the berth where the Discovery was parked, the security officer in charge was talking on a bug phone. It's like this. We found a warship here at the port. There are not many people on board, but it has gold, the chief of the security force reported. It would be great to have gold. You can still send people to investigate as usual. If more gold can be found to further investigate their identities, maybe we can make a lot of money, an old voice on the other side said. The chief of the guard said, yes, Mayor Grandet. He then hung up on the bug. The chief of the security force waved his hand, and several heavily armed security forces began to sneak into the Discovery. He looked at the Discovery, and there seemed to be a huge fortune in this weird warship.